So it is now beginning of July, about halfway through camp, and I've just finished reading Mike Lupica's Travel Team. I finished it last night, actually. The Travel Team, in of itself, is a pretty basic story of underdog that kind of conquers being told that they weren't good enough at something. Specifically, at something that they can't change, right? Mike Lupica has a lot of these books, if I remember correctly, that are very much based around the idea that that are just underdog stories that are underdogs based on something besides skill, right? This one is about height, right? It is about how our main character Danny is very good at basketball, and it isn't, the best shooter in the world or anything like that, but it certainly has skills that makes him a very good basketball player. But he does not make his 7th grade travel team because he's too small. And so Danny's father comes back into his life and kind of creates this new travel team, and this ragtag group of kids kind of pulls it out at the end to become an actual team that is not only competitive but also enjoys playing basketball, right? And through that we get couple different scenes that I think for Mike Lupica really kind of set the stage for what he wants and what I really think of when we talk about youth sports, how it should be. It is on a sports level, right? This is about finding a team that you like being on and isn't work, right? They're in the 7th grade, right? They should not be hating basketball because it is so tough and they can't enjoy themselves at all. They're in 7th grade, right? So we get kind of this kind of dual perspective. Danny starts out really hating the new team because, well, Danny was really good. He wants to take it kind of seriously, and he's surrounded by a bunch of people that are kind of jokesters or don't want to be there in the first place, but they're being kind of forced to. So yeah. And then we get Ty, who's really the second main character in this, and Ty's story is that he is the best basketball player in the 7th grade, and his dad is going to coach the main team, but he ends up breaking his wrist early on in the season, before the season even starts, and then sits around and watches the main team and realizes that he doesn't actually want to be a part of this because it's not fun for anyone involved, and it's not his team, it's his dad's team, right? So he eventually then leaves his dad's team, joins Danny's team, where they end up winning in the end of season tournament that they have for the league, right? I mean, it's a fun little book, right? There's nothing in terms of there's nothing really resounding in this, I don't think. The book kind of really bounces between two different things, which is sometimes it is really, really focused on being a sports book. It is focused on being this kind of like 6th, 7th grade. I'm really into sports. I know a lot about sports. And I want all the information. I want to read how a basketball play is run. I want to read, I want to learn about, or I want to read about all the scores that's happening, how all this is being taken in by the players and things like that. The other half is really focused on family dynamics. And the other Mike Lupica book I read, The Bat Boy, that one was almost entirely focused on family dynamics. That was really what the main point of that one was. This one has kind of family dynamics kind of in the background the whole time. It really pushes for a needing to have strong male figures in your life that are positive. It really kind of pushes that. It pushes the need for fathers present, which is super important as well. You can tell that this book is kind of written in the early 2000s because we get a lot of like Danny's the only kid that has divorced parents, and that's a huge deal. Versus now, most kids I would argue are very comfortable having divorced parents, and it's seen as a very normal thing. Versus 2004, where being 12 years old, you don't necessarily have, or that's not necessarily considered normal. Yeah. This book also kind of pushes some other interesting things. One of the actually really fun things is that this is Danny's team, the Warriors, is kind of like glued together out of small parts and just like who they can get to play, right? And one of those people, and really who ends up being the second best person on the team, is a character by the name of Colby Danes. And Colby Danes is a girl, right? And Colby Danes is like the best player on the girls' team, and she gets kind of recruited into the Warriors to them play, and is the second best player, which on one hand is really cool because it's like that's just something that you wouldn't necessarily have access to or wouldn't be considered normal. Having a girl play and start for a travel team, right? That is in a boys' league. But on the other hand, right, it's certainly very much she's the second best player on the bad team when she was the best player on the girls' team. And from my personal experience, having played basketball in middle school and high school and whatnot, a lot of those girls can play and play really well and can certainly match up pretty well with the boys. And it's certainly it's one of those things where, like, certainly I would argue that it is a positive thing, and yet somehow it doesn't feel as positive as it should be. But that is also coming from a right now perspective of me in 2023 rather than 2004, right? And just the social differences between that 20-year difference. So yeah. I really just think Mike Lupica has a thing for divorce moms, like hot divorce moms. There's like 2 or 3 pages in here. Like it's about 300-page book, um, and there's like 2 or 3 pages that are just about like how cool and how hot Danny's mom is. And I was like, Mike Lupica, why are you, Mike, Mikey boy, why do you need to put this in here? We don't need to know anything about this, because he did the same thing in the Bat Boy, where it was like there was just some mentions of how cool and hot the mom was. I was like, wait, they're 12. I don't need to be commenting on this. So I think Mike just might have a thing for divorced moms, and feels the need to put that in every book. I don't know. It was kind of weird when I was reading it, but I don't know. Yeah. Let's see, anything else let's talk about. I guess on like the whole story itself, like the whole narrative. The narrative is set up on the fact that Danny's father also played basketball for this travel team when he was in 7th grade, and was the star player and took the team to the national championship, and won the 7th grade travel team national championship, whatever. And was the star player for that, and kind of rode that to becoming a really hyped prospect, and then getting into the NBA, and then getting injured his first year because of an accident, right? And so like the story's kind of predicated on the idea that Danny is trying to live up to his father's legacy, even though his father's not really in his life, right? And I mean, that's one of those things where we'll get to like the need for like strong positive role models in our life, right? Especially as we're getting to kind of these 10 plus years, right? Is the need for someone to be able to say like, hey, you don't have to try to live up to anyone else's expectations of you. You're allowed to just be you, and you're allowed to just figure out and live, right? But the character Danny has put all this pressure on himself, and on account of that, feels that he needs to do everything, which is how we get to the whole. Danny feels the need to live up to his father's legacy, which then in turn brings the father back into his life in order to try to make this second travel team, because Danny didn't make the first one, right? Complicated little situation there, but right, it's just one of those things of where like if Danny's father had always been a part of Danny's life, even after the accident, even after all that, would Danny have felt the need to try to live up to this expectation, right? And would he have been so hurt over not making a basketball team? Who's to say, right? Yeah, it's important to have role models, especially when you're at that age, 12, 13, 14, because that's really kind of setting you up for who you're going to be throughout some very formative years, because it's not the formative years themselves that become the important thing. It's the lead up to the formative years. If you're already fucked over when you're getting to the formative years, your formative years, the high school age, the kind of the college age, are just going to deeper and set you into those values and those ideas that you had when you were growing up, right? It is the building to the formative years that is incredibly important, to have the right role models around you. That's that. that is like Lupica's travel team. I read about 2 different sections, so I read about 2 days, but